Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on over to another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. I'm your host, Matt Torty. If you guys haven't yet, I highly suggest you subscribe to the channel. Why? Because we go live every single day at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time and 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, minus Friday. I ended up taking Friday night off and Saturday, Sunday. Unless there's something really crazy going on, then I'm not going to do it. Listen, over inside of Ukraine, there's some major news that's pouring out. It looks like the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine have broken down. I think we all kind of saw this crap coming. I mentioned it last night. I said Putin did something really clever. He did something really clever when he did it. Don't agree with it, but nevertheless, he did something clever. And before we get into all of that, I actually have a couple announcements that I want to make. Number one, a friend of mine that used to work for Breitbart got some pretty big news in her life. Check this out.
Hi, I'm Christina Wong. I'm pleased to announce that I've just been sworn in as Director of Communications and Chief Spokesperson for the Secretary of the Navy. My job is to keep you up to date on what the Secretary's been doing, his top priorities, and happenings from across the Navy and Marine Corps. Secretary Phelan has been working hard every day on shipbuilding, maintaining our maritime dominance. And
listen, I am just very proud of Christina for the hard work that she's put in. She is one hell of a reporter and she continues to crush it. So that also makes me smile. Yeah, the other thing that I'm very proud of, I'm also proud of the true supporters and everybody that's over there on X for being able to do this. When I first looked at this morning, we had one donation in here, which was from Maya, going to help him out. This is a member of the Speak the Truth community that was asking for a little bit of help. It's posted up over on my X account if you guys want to be able to help him out. He's looking for a total of $1,000. And he is a single dad that is attempting to get his truck fixed. I don't think it's that freaking hard here in the United States of America to be able to do things like that. But for some reason, we could raise over $400,000 for somebody that just got arrested for murder, which he is entitled to a proper self-defense. But for some reason, the single dad can't get $1,000 to fix his truck. I think that's a bit ridiculous. So ended up happening. Now, before we end up getting into the peace talks, I think it's important to lay out just a couple different facts. Good morning, everybody. Happy to see you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy to see you. This document that I have right up here on your screen, this is the first thing that we need to kind of discuss when we look at it. Apparently, I've got to fix the lens on this camera. Listen, I have two documents right here. Two, which I'm about to show you, in which Russia decided it would be a good idea to recognize and swore to recognize the sovereignty of Ukraine's border. Right here, Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Partnership between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. There's Article 2. The high contracting parties, which would be Russia and Ukraine, according to this document, in agreement with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations and their obligations under the final act of the Conference of the Security and Cooperation in Europe, shall respect each other's territorial integrity and confirm the inviolability of their common borders. They are straight up agreeing, both Russia and Ukraine, to respect the sovereignty of each other's borders. Here's the other one that everybody is very familiar with, the Budapest Memorandum. I've got paragraph freaking 1 pulled up, or excuse me, Annex 1 pulled up right for everybody. The Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, and the Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the United States of America, reaffirm their commitment to Ukraine in accordance with the principles of the final act of the Conference of the Security and Cooperation in Europe to respect the independence and sovereignty and the existing borders of Ukraine. Why does that matter? Why? Because that has been the policy of the United States of America all the way back since 1992, when we started pushing all of this stuff and making sure that it happened, because everybody saw the Russian Federation about to do some stupid and wild and crazy stuff. And today we end up having information that comes out that says Marco Rubio cancels the meeting over in London because of new statements allegedly now that are coming out from Zelensky. He essentially rejected Putin's offer. And damn right he should have, because it was a garbage offer. Putin wanted pretty much all the freaking terrain he's currently holding on to. And Zelensky, rightfully so, ends up denying it. Now, call sign Texas was in here, and he let us all know yesterday it's against the Ukrainian constitution, so Zelensky can't even do it. It's against the law for him to actually recognize that. So there's not a snowball's in chance it's going to happen. Not a snowball's chance in hell it would ever happen. Now, the question is what caused the United States to back out? Was it because Zelensky refused to give up all that freaking territory? Or is it because it's been the U.S.'s standing policy to take care of Ukraine? That's a very good question. So I went back in time and I did just a little bit of research here as far as foreign policy, not just of the United States goes, but of the Trump admin, the last one and this one. Because when I go over and I take a look at some of these news, like these different news articles and stuff like that, I see this. This is a 4-minute read. And again, you look at where it comes out of. This one's by CNN. It says, Trump admin ready to recognize Russia control of Crimea as part of the framework to end Ukraine war, according to a source. Good question who the source is. Do we know? No, we don't. We have zero idea who the source is that CNN is talking about here. But let's go down and see what they have to say. The Trump admin is ready to recognize Russian control of Crimea as part of the U.S. proposal to drive an end to the war with Ukraine, an official familiar with the framework had told CNN. Great. So some official that they're talking about says that this is what's going to happen. My question is, what official is this? Because there is allegedly an official right now that's out there leaking all sorts of information about the United States of America. And it makes me wonder if they're not one and the same. Matt Borgeson says, with the amount of gains Russia has been having on Ukrainian fronts, will Ukraine be able to survive even a year? I can't see them surviving. What gains? Ukraine ended up retrograding out of Kursk, planned withdrawal. So what other massive gains was Russia making? Yeah, and I see everybody in the comments saying gains. Brovsk, they had a huge issue. And now what I'm seeing is, again, those same reports that are coming about that chemical weapons attack using a blister agent are looking more and more true. And so part of me is also not wondering if all of these things are freaking intertwined or linked. Believe it or not, there's actually people from Trump's administration that follow me on social media. And so when I say things like that, they know I just don't put things out flippantly. They know that generally speaking, I have some sort of backing into it. Here's another article that ended up coming out by CNN today. I think it's important we take a look at it as well. Vance issues Ukraine ultimatum after Rubio snubs key London meeting. Very interesting when we take a look at it. So now we have Trump admin, according to an official. No idea who this official is, but according to some official, the Trump admin willing to recognize Crimea. We're going to go take a look at the Trump admin's freaking stance in the past. We already looked at the U.S. policy in the past, which was 100% recognizing the sovereignty of Ukrainian territory, to include Crimea. That's what the headline reads. And when you read that headline, it most definitely makes it appear as if Vance issued the ultimatum to Ukraine. I think when you read it in a deeper context and you go through this article, it's not Vance giving Ukraine an ultimatum. That's not what he said. As a matter of fact, I ended up having to go way down in the article. Okay, so first, let's take a look at what Zelensky said about this whole thing. Ukraine will not illegally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There is nothing to talk about. It's against our constitution. Pretty common sense. Pretty common sense. So Putin ends up proposing something that goes against the Ukrainian constitution. Vance, on the other hand, had a different statement to make, according to this article. I've actually got the quote over here, so I don't have to run through it. It makes my life a heck of a lot easier. J.D. Vance threatened to abandon negotiations on Wednesday, telling reporters during a visit to India, and I quote, "We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the U.S. to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy on the groundwork." So what that can mean is that can mean that that proposal that the U.S. ended up putting forward, the answer back from Putin and the Russian Federation yesterday ends up being completely and totally against what the U.S. suggested. Same could go for Zelensky. But remember, Putin is the idiot that came out first. So let's now, well, hold on. We've got a little bit more to go over. Let's now look at the previous stances of the Trump administration, because I think they're important for everybody to kind of recognize. Must be cold in Texas. Thunderstorms and raining, my friend. Thunderstorms and raining. So let's take a previous look. 2016 campaign, Trump said he would take a look at recognizing Crimea because the people of Crimea would rather be with Russia. He did state that in 2016. But his first term in 2017, you got to understand, that was before he got into office and before he got schooled up with intel and everything else. Official U.S. policy spelled out by Secretary Pompeo, July 25, 2018, Crimea Declaration was non-recognition of Russia's annexation. And the White House kept Crimea relations sanctions in place. If you don't believe me, I'm going to show you right here. Give me one sec. This was under the Trump admin in 2018. There you go. Pompeo, U.S. doesn't recognize Crimea as part of Russia. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday, that the U.S. does not recognize Crimea as part of Russia. During his testimony centered on Trump's recent meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So immediately following the meetings with Vladimir Putin, they end up making the statement, no, we do not recognize your control of the Crimean Peninsula. Why? Because it was an illegal invasion. He annexed it illegally, held a vote that nobody believes was true. Excuse me as I talk and actually let out a little bit of burp. Not Magnus ends up coming in and giving out 10 Speak the Truth memberships. Appreciate you. So these are the things that we have to take a look at when it comes down to it. Trump never issued an order recognizing Russian sovereignty, ever. He refused to recognize Crimea as Russian territory. Earlier, before he got in office, he had hinted towards taking a look at it. And what he said, again, was he would take a look. And he took a look. And this was the stance of the last Trump administration on Crimea over inside of Ukraine. Matt says, could you see that Russia refusing many of the peace concessions having to do with that, the legitimacy of Putin's power would be questioned once the war ends? Yeah, I could. Dude, Matt, I could easily see that. 100%. I could see that. I really could. I think it's not just his legitimacy, all right, but his control, his grasp, and the millions of freaking people that he sent forward to die. It's so ridiculous. Kim Jong-un has been staying quiet. Yeah, he has, hasn't he? It's kind of weird how that happens. Big Simpin' Trump wouldn't have allowed this to happen. That's true. Big Pimpin' Trump, excuse me. Big Pimpin' Trump. Big Pimpin' Trump. This was his statement. Everybody that's saying that he never supported Ukraine, right here is the official stance of his last administration. And on this one, we don't even know what the details are other than CNN allegedly claiming, all right, other than CNN allegedly claiming that they're ready to recognize it. Now, that's a pretty freaking powerful statement because that would be a complete reversal of U.S. policy over the last decade plus. U.S. policy for the last decade under Trump, under Biden, even under Obama, was not recognizing Russian control of Crimea. And so when I bring this up and I show it and I say, this is CNN, this is what CNN's saying, even if Fox News was saying this, I would call them out too, because I've seen every single one of these mainstream media networks throw garbage out like this. Matt Borgeson, could you see a civil war sparking in Russia post-Russia-Ukraine war? I feel there is a divide in their government more than even in the U.S. That's very possible. A lot of people are pissed off inside of Russia over what's happening. Back in the early days of this war, we ended up seeing a lot of Russians that were fleeing and trying to get the hell out of there so they didn't get drafted. A lot of them don't agree. Putin was hiding the bodies of people that were dying over in the Donbass for the longest time before his special military operation. Family members were getting pissed because they weren't getting paid out. They were getting told they were dying in training and all sorts of other crap, while Putin had them over on the front dying inside of the DPR and LPR. The Russian people haven't been extremely supportive of this entire thing because they've seen their people getting sent to die. They've seen it. And having their own government lie about it, and their own government lie about invading Crimea. And the freaking support out in the freaking east of Ukraine, shooting down a commercial airliner for crying out loud. Russia is directly responsible for that. Russia is also directly responsible for a bunch of other war crimes that have taken place over inside of Ukraine. They died in training. Right, that was one. I remember hearing that. There's all sorts of garbage lies about how they ended up dying back then. And we went back and we looked at the cemeteries. Dude, we used to take, no kidding, we used to take social media posts of Russian soldiers that were doing training over near the Ukrainian border. And we used to follow their social media posts and geolocate them. We knew exactly in Ukraine where they were at because the Russian soldiers were dumb enough to post that crap on their social media. And so we knew Putin was lying all the way back even before Russia officially invaded Ukraine. We knew that and launched this ridiculous war. Putin is directly responsible for this, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. Is North Korea still sending soldiers? I haven't heard anything about North Korea sending a new batch of soldiers, but I have heard that thousands of them ended up dying over on the front. Good question, old man Weiss. I haven't heard anything about new batches of them coming out of there. I see Jay Slick down there, or Jay Stick answering yes, they have. I'll have to go look into that. They have a security pact with Russia now. So every time Ukraine crosses the border into Russia, they could be facing North Korean soldiers. Same thing. If South Korea and North Korea go to war, or if South Korea invades the North, or if U.S. backs up South Korea crossing the DMZ, Russian troops will be on the front line according to their security pact. Now, it was a very strategic move by Putin in order to do that, and I think it signals that he is weakening. He probably looked at it as, I need more people, I need more trained soldiers, and I can't recruit them fast enough because they all continue to die. The doctrine in between Ukraine and Russia and how they fight on the front line is completely and totally different. Ukraine's using combined arms, and they rely on combined arms in order to make things happen. They also rely on drones heavily these days. Here is a picture of a drone flying over Russia this morning. They're trying to shoot out of the dang sky. What-oh, SpaghettiOs. Run, Russian, run. So, what's the end result? What's happening? Well, right now, it actually looks like Moscow is back to being under attack. Yesterday, we saw an explosion of over 100,000 tons of munitions outside of Moscow. Today, there's new attacks taking place. That is allegedly the aftermath following a drone strike. Now, what did I do with it? Where did it go? Come here. This is a good one. Here it is. This is a new angle of the 100,000 tons alleged munitions depot that was being stored. Take a look at it. No, those strikes absolutely do not look like Ukraine wants peace, nor should they have to accept the deal that Putin proposed. There is absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, that Putin has presented that would be a viable option for Ukraine. It's absolutely asinine. Everything that Putin proposed was basically give in to where we're at, and we're going to let you guys off. Absolutely no excuse for Ukraine in order to take that up. But the part of this that I want to point out, and it's something that we talked about last time, is an explosion of this scale, because again, this went down yesterday, an explosion of this scale, take a look at that, 100,000 tons of munitions. The probability that the United States helped with the intel on this is pretty high. And so I don't have the official statements from the White House. I don't know what frickin' Trump's policy is going to be when it comes to Ukraine. I don't. I do know that his administration has a history of recognizing Crimea as Ukraine's and not Russians. And that has been longstanding U.S. policy. And for some reason right now, people are just saying that we're about to reverse the policy based on a source. Matt Borgeson wants to know, what would happen to Russian nuclear arsenal during a civil war? Would the U.S. have to assist them with a nuclear program in that case, or China even? That's a really good question. I don't know if the U.S. would be allowed to come in and assist them. And quite frankly, I don't know if we would allow any U.S. personnel to go in and assist in that. I think that is something that the UN would look at and try to make some sort of a freaking deal with Russia in order to take place. I would see UN troops going in, not so much the U.S. or China, but I could see Chinese troops going in and dealing with that as well, or contractors, or, however you want to skin that cat. Battlefield boys, the issue with a revolution is that it won't result in a democratic government. In fact, I would put a whole check on it that they would see a consolidation of power and an even more despotic regime with less checks and balance. Yeah, you're probably correct. You are probably correct. I think if they take Putin and they overthrow him in a civil war, if they end up getting rid of him, that everything. John Kent, President Zelensky own one with your mom. Oh, good. A Russian. Great. First of all, his name's not John. Bye. First of all, his name's not John. Second of all, that statement didn't make any sense. So thank you for that. It's good to see the Russian trolls are in the house. Now that we're out here combating Russian misinformation, it's always fun to see the Russian trolls coming back in. It's like every single time I end up getting a hold of them, and I end up putting things out there, the Russian trolls want to come through and start freaking running their mouths. It's amazing how that happens over on this channel. You have something good to say, you want to talk about something. Matt banning the wrong guy. Did I ban the wrong guy? I don't know. If I have to unban him, we'll do it later. I'll talk to the mods. But either way, on face value, I'm not about that shit. All right, so moving forward. Letting you know, no Discord announcement and a very late YouTube announcement as well. Can we get a quick recap? Yeah, here's your quick recap. Started off by talking about this. Let me get it up. Started off by pointing out the fact that twice in history, Russia has put their name down. This was their first declaration saying that they're going to take care of Ukrainian borders, that they're going to respect the sovereignty of Ukrainian borders. I believe this was signed back in '92. Treaty on Friendship, Cooperation, and Partnership between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. Article 2, the high contracting parties, which would be Russia and Ukraine, in accordance with the provision of the Charter of the UN and obligations under the final act of conference on security and cooperation in Europe, shall respect each other's territorial integrity and confirm the involatility of their common borders. That's number one. Number two, it's reaffirmed inside the Budapest Memorandum. The Russian Federation, UK, Great Britain, Northern Ireland, United States of America reaffirm their commitment to Ukraine in accordance with the principles of the final act of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe to respect the independence and sovereignty and the existing borders of Ukraine. Now, those included Crimea. Today, it ended up being announced that Secretary of State Marco Rubio ended up canceling the visit over to London over the Ukrainian peace talks. This comes after yesterday when Putin ended up announcing that he had a peace proposal and he was open to peace with Ukraine just as long as Ukraine accepts pretty much all of the terrain that Russia has taken is going to belong to them. Zelensky came out with an answer today on all of that. What Zelensky ended up saying was not a snowball's chance in hell. Zelensky, his quote, to be exact, let me go grab it. I think I freaking did away with it. Get this up on your screen. Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky made clear Tuesday that he was open to talks with Russia, so he's still open to talks, but that Kiev would not accept a deal that recognizes Moscow's control of Crimea. It's weird because that's still the current standing policy of the United States of America. He said, Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There is nothing to talk about. It's against our Constitution. Pretty clear. So U.S. policy, just to fact check, current standing U.S. policy for the last decade has been not accepting Russia control over Crimea. Zelensky came out and said Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There is nothing to talk about. It's against our constitution. But people like CNN, Vance issues Ukraine ultimatum after Rubio snubs key lending meeting. So what Vance say? This is what Vance said. Vance came in and said this. Let me pull it up. J.D. Vance said, and I quote, "We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the U.S. to walk away from this process. Not to abandon Ukraine, to walk away from the peace process. We've engaged an extraordinary amount of diplomacy of the ground work." He didn't say he's going to walk away from Ukraine. He didn't issue an ultimatum to Ukraine. He said they issued a proposal to both Russia and to Ukraine, and that the parties need to be able to come to an agreement on it. And if Russia put something in there, which they know is against U.S. current policy, and they know Ukraine can't do constitutionally speaking, well, guess what? Who do you think actually freaking doesn't want to have peace, regardless of the words they're using, so that they can push propaganda out there in order to push this freaking conflict further? Nava Zimmerman, finally caught you live. This has nothing about Ukraine. Sorry, I was wondering if you are going to talk about Egypt training with China Air Force. Thank you for your passion for the truth. No, but I can look into Egypt training with the Chinese Air Force and bring that up tonight for the live later on today. And I have no doubt that things are going to continue to develop on this story as we move throughout the day. CNN, also, as far as the recap goes, came out with this article. Kylie Atwood says, Trump administration ready to recognize Russian control of Crimea as part of the framework to end the Ukraine war, according to a source they have. She says that according to a source who they're not going to name, the Trump admin is ready to recognize Russian control of Crimea as part of the U.S. proposal to drive an end to the war with Ukraine. An official familiar with the framework told CNN. Now, I find this highly freaking convenient that there was a source that came out complaining about the different leaks inside of the Trump administration yesterday, talking about the SecDef and everything else. It seems like these sources that are leaking this information might have something against the current admin because they just got fired. So we'll see. The truth eventually is going to come out. I could be completely wrong on this, but as it stands right now, U.S. policy is not to recognize Russian control of Crimea. I brought it up and I ended up showing this here just a little bit ago. So I'm going to put it on the screen for those of you that don't believe me. Now, in context and in fairness, during Trump's 2016 campaign, what he said was, quote, that he would take a look, end quote. The people of Crimea would rather be with Russia. He didn't make a commitment. He said he'd take a look at it during his campaign. But in July of 2018, for the Crimea Declaration, the United States says this. This is the Secretary of State for the Trump admin in 2018. Remember, we still didn't recognize control of Crimea belonging to that of Russia. So in 2018, this was the Trump admin after taking a look at everything. He said the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday he assured the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday that the U.S. does not recognize Crimea as a part of Russia. He doesn't. Never has. And yet today, CNN decides to come out and say that they do. So my question is, who is your dang source? Because that would be a massive reversal of policy if they are in fact trying to do that. Devin Seals, Techyon, said he works for a cyber firm in U.S. utility sector and has seen an uptick 60% in attacks on their systems in the U.S. Could those IPs be considered a target in the future? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's not, 60% in attacks, uptick? Sure. That's very reasonable. Very, very reasonable. Why? Because the U.S. is doing indirect attacks on Russia. And it's something that I've talked about before. I went over on Real America's Voice this morning with Jake Novak for freaking morning coffee. I ended up going over that with him about how we're going against frickin' Russia, what we're doing that's going to affect them, and our long-standing policy with Ukraine. So in order for people to come out and speak the opposite right now, in my opinion, is nothing but a bunch of mis and disinformation, because our long-standing policy has always been to recognize the sovereignty of Ukraine's borders. It has been since the 1990s, and it was in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 19, 21, 2, 23, 24, and to be determined, 25. But history would suggest that we do. So I don't see a reason for us to have a reversal on policy here. Angela coming in, $1.99. She just wanted to donate $1.99. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have to get going because I have another news interview because I think it's very important. At least I get my voice out there. Today, I'm going to be going on I-24 English here in about 20 to 30 minutes. I got to get off and I got to go get ready for it. I'm going to go on I-24 News on the English version here in the next half an hour. Followed by that, I'll be on I-24 French. So I get to put out a lot of information and I get to correct a lot of disinformation. I'm very thankful and I'm really grateful for that. I wanted to make sure that I got out here and gave you guys the proper information on this particular subject because it is important and people need to know that. I will be back later on this evening. If I have time this morning, I'm going to jump in the Discord and have a great chat with you, ladies and gents. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace, love, happiness, God bless. I want to appreciate every single person that donated. I want to give a special congratulations to Christina Wong. And real quick, let's check up on the fundraiser for our freaking truth supporting dad and see where he's currently sitting at. He's coming in at 775. Let me get that up there. True supporter, longtime member of the channel, right over here. Boom, coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, we did even more. 775. This channel has changed lives, and I love it because of that. We have quite literally changed lives. We have brought joy and happiness to people, and we've made the world a better place. Can't argue that fact. I'm very proud to be at the helm of this sucker.